Okay, so I pretty much dumped into the chat there the plan so that anybody that just shows up, you can read through the chat backlog and find out what the plan is. Before I get digging into it, why don't I share the live stream link on Twitter and IRC. Alright, tweeted it. Here's the link to the tweet if anybody wants to share it. And I'll be right back because the cat wants something. I assume she needs to be put out. Alright, let's get to it. Alright, so first things first, we need to create a controller for the sub window. And so that'll be placed inside of the background process, where we manage the windows at a high level. And we got this sub windows system here, so we'll copy from one of my existing one, which is the prompts sub window system, and we'll call this the tab switcher. Alright, so let's update the nodes appropriately. There is one tab switcher per window. Let's see, I suppose question should be, do we intend to maintain the tab switcher in memory when it's not visible, or do we just hide it? Or do we just destroy it, rather? Let's go ahead and assume that we keep it active at all times, which is similar to how the Howdy Karmic Cast. Glad to have you with us. Yeah, let's assume that we're going to create the tab switcher for each browser window and then show or hide it, which means the status bar sub window routine is probably the one we ought to be copying from. Alright, now let's see here. We will need access to the tab manager. I'm not sure yet if we're going to need to export a custom RPC, but let's assume yes and just leave that in there for now. Now let's see, how does the status bar work? It's set up, it is created for the window. So this is really the code we probably ought to duplicate. Hey Michael, how's it going? Good to see you. How are things? Alright, so I'm going to copy over from the status bar code. Status bar is that thing that shows up down at the bottom left, what you're hovering over. And so that's the code we're copying from. And rather than loading the status bar HTML, we'll load the tab switcher HTML. Yep, alright. And probably don't need that. Interesting. We call show right away. That can't be right. Unless it's required for repositioning. Let's take a quick look at the front end code for the status bar and see how that operates. It's a pretty simple program. Right. So it's just visible at all times. And it hides itself appropriately, so we don't need that. Good, man. We're really changing it up, you know? But I feel good about it. This kind of files-oriented design that we're going with right now seems like it'll be a fun way to work and won't have to, this kind of lets us get a little bit of the opinion out of the system in a way. Alright. So setup, destroy, that all looks fine. Get looks fine. Reposition will need to be updated to position in a center fashion. Show looks correct. Hide looks correct. Set will probably need to be modified. Let's get rid of that for now. And so let's first just get a tab switcher to render, and then we can worry about how the API should work. I appreciate it, Olfactive. Music is from a playlist I found for coding. Let me grab the URL for it. It's Apple Music, but if you use Apple Music, of course now it's not copying the link. Can't get it to copy the link, sorry. Alright, so let's just get this thing rendering. We'll need to figure out how to calculate the dimensions of it correctly at some point, but for now let's just set it at 400 by 200 and center it in the window. Alright, so next up we need to go into our window manager and introduce this new subsystem. Moving the brand site to hash base, planning to intro the platform to the rest of the fragrance industry. Alright. Well, just so you know, we're probably going to be Hashbase is going to be undergoing some changes. We're probably going to rebrand it and as just Beaker Cloud to reduce the number of brand names we have going. And we're still trying to figure out, the next version of DAT is going to have a bunch of breaking changes in it, and we're still trying to wrap our heads around whether or not Hashbase is going to come with us or if it's going to stay hosting the DAT 1.0 sites, and then we'll create this new Beaker Cloud for the new DAT 2.0. There's a lot of kind of open questions on this stuff, which I apologize for on that front, because it kind of sucks to have to go back and reevaluate how some of the core stuff works. But we felt like that was the right call, since we want to kind of take a fresh 2.0 approach to everything. So just letting you know, Hashbase may end up being retired. We'll keep it running, but it will not be where we kind of put the new code into. It's looking like. So just be aware of that. If you have more questions about that, feel free to ask me. I'll answer them for you. I just don't want you to get caught unawares and depending on something that's not going to be working for you in the not too distant future. Alright, so now the subsystem's been added. And now we'll add the tab switcher folder to our front end. And for now, all we need to do is dump in a HTML file and output something so we can verify that it's working correctly. Alright. Last step. Making a job board for freelancers. Sweet. Alright, last step, we need to trigger the tab switcher to appear whenever Control Tab is pressed. So right now Control Tab is probably in here. Let's see. Gotta figure out where my Control Tab is currently handled as a key binding. It actually might not be there. It might be handled through global shortcuts. There it is. So, currently it's set up to tell the tab manager to change the active tab. Makes sense. So we're just going to replace this for now with a method that tells the tab manager to show up. And we're going to have to figure out how to detect when control has been released, because our key binding system is not that intelligent. It just fires whenever a keystroke has been hit. It doesn't tell us when it's released, so that'll be a new challenge for us. Alright. Well, so Olfactive is asking, what impact do we think peer-to-peer and Beaker could have to the market and the internet? You know, we're really trying to system and everything, but a personal computer that operates at a global scale. And so we're calling this whole global file system, this whole peer-to-peer shared file system, we're calling it the grid. Or at least that's the term we're floating, right? So if you're on the grid, you're a part of this shared data backbone with everybody else, one big file system. And, you know, if it works the way we're hoping, you end up with the kind of, well, certain things get a little easier. You can work with the file system as opposed to having to set up custom web services all the time, so hopefully setting up new applications online gets easier instead of having to build out these complicated, you know, thick web apps that you stick on AWS. Instead, you'd be able to just use the browser and the grid, and you wouldn't have to set up a server at all. So that's one major impact, is just making it easier for people to build applications. Another impact we're hoping for is to give better personal ownership of your information, you know, so you always have all your data, all your files, or even though you're doing things like social media, it's all your own files. So that would be an impact. And then there'd be a kind of a, you know, the grid is a shared backbone for information. So if you have a service that runs entirely on the grid, you would be able to recreate that service somewhere else and import all the data, and there's no walled garden anymore, right? So if you set up a forum somewhere and somebody else took all the code for your forum and gave it the same file system, you'd have the same service running somewhere else. So there's no longer this kind of data friction, you know what I mean? It's all part of this one global shared information system. Yeah, it's a little bit like a blockchain, in the sense that it's one shared network. Alright. Tab switcher. So we're going to call show whenever Control Tab is hit. And then we'll figure out the rest afterwards. Alright, so let's see if this is going to compile for us. Alright, that threw an error. Can't read property ID of undefined. Okay, so it looks like the tab switcher window was not created. Now, why might that be? Forgot to pass in the parent window. So we need to send in the window object. And let's try that again. Okay, not seeing anything. Let's see, why not? It's definitely not there. So let's do a little tracing here. So we're going to show, and then got view, adding to parent window. And then let's check our reposition code. Could just be that it's getting positioned incorrectly. And then last thing, let's set the background to red, so if it does appear somewhere, we will definitely see it. And let's try this again. Errors during the initialization? Doesn't appear so. Now, it shouldn't be calling show just yet, so that's wrong. So let's look into why show is getting called prematurely. Now that's why. So that's incorrect. We'll remove that. And let's see if that solves our problem. Browser views have a layering. And it's possible that because add browser view was getting called too early, it was just underneath all the other layers. There it is. Alright, yep. So Control Tab currently makes it show up. Control Shift Tab makes it go away. So that's good. Alright, so I think the next trick is figuring out how to make it so that the tab switcher stays open as long as I hold down Control. So let's dig into our hotkeys code. Let's see here. So we're using I'm going to shrink this code down a little bit so I can see a little more. Hope y'all don't mind. So we have this custom software here that registers to the global key bindings event. The global input event, and right now it's set up to only listen for key downs. Good news is this should be relatively straightforward to change. So I think, yeah, so it's called on for input event, and it's just not designed, so we're gonna have to come up with some kind of fancy way to deal with this. What is it going to be? Probably we want to create a completely separate system than our key bindings utility, because the key bindings utility is really meant to detect the key press, you know, so like Control T for instance. And this is a different model of how the key stroke works. So I'm thinking what we're going to do is add another before input event, and we'll add it right before these are put in. I don't know. Am I still live here? Yeah, I think so. Okay. I got disconnected from chat and now my viewers dropped down to 2, so hopefully, hopefully the whole system didn't just go down. Alright. On before input. How do I want to label this? Yeah, it does look like I had a connectivity interruption. Because now my music stopped on me. Alright, well, hopefully that'll sort itself out soon. Okay, sorry about the connectivity problems. I'm seeing your chat, Michael, so I guess we're good. Alright, so what am I going to call this? On before input. Let's do... That is an ugly name, but it's descriptive. And descriptive is good. So I'm going to replace these two here. Going to leave them as they are. And so control, let's see, where is that? Control page down and page up will keep working the way they do now, but control tab and control shift tab will switch over to using the tab switcher. And let's take a look at input type. So if e.input if input dot type equals key down, else if input dot type equals key up. And let's take a look at that input value and see what Electron gives us, so we know what to watch for here. Alright, so we got a type telling us what the event type is, a key telling us what the key is. And so you also have pieces telling you about the meta state on the keyboard. So what we're going to do is look for key down on tab with control set, and then we will be entering into the tab switcher mode. So if input.type is key down and input.key equals tab and input.control is true, then we're going to show the tab switcher window. And I need to know the window type. Wouldn't that figure? So we need to also know if the tab switcher is active or not. And really we need to check that on the window object. And so we're going to need to have a mapping telling us which ones are active. So is tab switcher active? And so we will set it to true, and then if the tab switcher is active and we get a key up and the input dot key is control, we know to turn it off. Alright. So this should give us the basic correct behavior, which is that when I hit Control Tab, the tab switcher will show up, and then when I release Control, the tab switcher will go away. Okay, yep, worked perfectly. You can confuse it by hitting the other control, but that's alright. So that's good. Okay, so far so good. Next up. Next up, I suppose we need to what do you suppose next here? I guess the next thing to do is to send over the current tabs listing into the tab switcher UI so that it can give a correct listing. And before we do that, why don't we go ahead and get some of the rendering done, some of the UI done. So I'm going to make it so that as soon as you hit Control Tab, it stays open, and that'll give me an opportunity to work on it. And can I reload it? I think I can. Okay, good. That's plenty. Now then, let's figure out the aesthetics of this thing. It's going to be a grid for sure. And I'm going to show the fav icons. So let's start with the grid. Now let me just put that inside of main. Okay, and then we'll do div. And inside of each div, we'll put an image. We'll do the fav icon asset, and let's just go with beakerbrowser.com. So we're just faking the data for now. And let's just stick in a couple there. We're going to use display grid. Probably put a gap on it. Alright. And so I think the plan is to do it just like this, where it's a nice horizontal listing. And I guess that's nice. It shows only the name of the current one. That's probably a good call. Alright. So we'll set a width of... Let's do a width and a height of 64. That's probably as large as these icons can be. Okay. Let's see what that looks like so far. Whew, terrible. Alright. So the grid needs a template definition. And I can never remember how to do that, so I'm going to jump over to my existing code here and pull out what I used for pins. There we go. Okay. And we're going to need to dynamically increase the width of this tab switcher based on the number of items, so that's no problem. In fact, we should be able to calculate that based on how many tabs there are without having to have the UI code send back any information to the manager, so that's easy to do. No RPC will be required for it. Let's fix the typography real quick. Alright. 120 pixels seems about right, so let's center the image. Yeah, let's see. May actually be able to do a text align center with it. No? Alright, maybe I need to display block it. There we go. Now let's get rid of that min-max and just set it to a fixed 120 pixels. Okay. Now that fav icon is not scaling well, but we'll have to kind of fill that out as we get more live data to work with. Now, I wonder if there's a way to keep the grid from wrapping like this. Maybe the right call to use Flexbox instead of grid, because I know how to stop it from wrapping if it's Flexbox. So let's do that. Oh, now we Google real fast. Grid autoflow column. Whoa, authorization required. That's not supposed to happen, CodePen. Alright. And we lost our UI, so I gotta restart it. Let's see how that grid autoflow column does for us. That might be the solution we need. What's going on? It's not showing up. Okay, what's the deal? Ah, man, that's such a vague... So usually whenever I get this error right here, it means that Electron is choking on a number that I'm giving it, possibly because it's not an integer and it needs to be an integer. So let's hop over to these calculations here. Turns out it's... let's see. Yeah, look at that. The Y had a decimal on it. You can convert any number in JavaScript into an integer by ORing it with 0. It's a handy trick. Basically causes an internal conversion to an integer. So that should solve that problem. Grid autoflow column is similar to flex direction row. Then it's what I want. Good deal. Okay, let's get a small, slight background on this thing so I can just kind of... Actually, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a border on the body. That should help. Okay. Yeah, alright, interesting. Alright. Let's remove one of these for now. Huh, it uses the maximum width. Good to know. Now, we're going to probably want to put a border radius of 8 pixels on the body. And we're going to want a padding on it of, let's try 10 pixels at first. And we're going to want the grid items to have a similar border radius of 8 pixels and probably a padding of, let's say, 6 pixels. Let's add a hover state to them. Okay, hover state's a little too light. Let's try a 505 FA. There's always a slight blue tint to all of my grays. Still pretty light, so let's try taking that to F3, F3, F8. Yeah, you know, it needs to be a little darker than that, because this is going to be something that is indicating the currently targeted tab. That's a little better. Let's give a little bit of margin underneath the image. Alright. Now then, let's see. Feeling like that 64 by 64 won't work. Let's just take a look and see what 32 by 32 looks like. Obviously a lot cleaner. So let's add a little more margin underneath. And a little margin above to kind of give it a centering effect. Well, let's roll with that for now. Why don't we put a border on each of these just for the moment? Alright, let's roll with that for the moment. We'll have to evolve this thing as we go. So, what next? We're going to need to have some dynamic rendering inside the index.html, which normally I would do using lit element and web components, but I want this thing to be relatively lightweight. Still, it might not be worth the effort. We can go ahead and set the correct height on this thing, because we now know what it should be. So let's get that height out of it. It's going to be 86 plus the padding of 10, so 206, I guess? No, 106 rather. No, that math is wrong. Straight up 86, really. Alright, because it's box sizing, border box. And a little more to accommodate for the border, so 108. Okay, so then we'll set the height there, and here, and here, and here. And let's restart it so it'll look nice and clean. case anybody was curious, sometimes I'll do these live streams just to motivate myself to work. If I have y'all watching me, I have no excuses. Okay, so there's some overflow occurring, which means I either got the size wrong or there's a margin on the body. There we go. Of course there is, because the default user agent style puts a margin on the body. Should have known that. So just to kind of reiterate what I'm doing here, this is basically an entire web view that's just layered on top of all the other web views, and that's kind of how Beaker operates in a lot of different scenarios. For instance, all these menus right here, that's just a web view right there. Electron calls this particular thing a browser view. So it's almost like this is a JavaScript page or window that's just being run, JavaScript HTML page is being run on top, and it's just all layering. I can do it, yeah. I had a little bit of a night out on Saturday, and I'm still recovering, so that's why I'm a little low energy today. But we're getting it done. Alright, so next up, why don't we go ahead and JavaScriptize our rendering here. So, for the most part, the way we'll be able to make this work is by having the main process execute JavaScript on this page, which means that we'll just basically have it export a function which can be called from the window, or from the background process rather. So we'll attach it to the window, and we'll say, we'll call it set tabs, or yeah, we'll do set tabs. And it's going to take in an array of tabs, and all they really need is the URL and the title. And then we'll do for let tab of tabs. We'll iterate through them. Now, let's see. We're going to do some good old-fashioned vanilla DOM manipulation on this thing. So the main element, we're going to remove all children, and probably the easiest way to do that is just to set inner HTML to an empty string, but if anybody here knows a better way to do that, let me know. We'll create the tab EL using document.createElement div, and we could, why don't we do this the way we should and create each element individually. So image EL equals very typically I will do this using lit HTML, which uses template strings to give you kind of a React style of interface, which is great. I don't know if I'm girly enough for you, but I got some purples in my aesthetic, so maybe that'll do it. Be good enough for you. Alright, so on the image, we'll set the attribute to be the asset, favicon, and then the tab.url. And then on the title EL, we just set text content to the tab.title. And then we just tab EL append image EL. We append both of those, both the image and the title. And then we just take main EL and append tab EL. Not the most beautiful code, but it works. Straight up naked DOM, man. It's the way to do it. So to test this code, we'll just have it URL HTTPS. And we'll get rid of that, and if I refresh, we should see the same thing, but only 2 instead of 3. Okay, we're close. Oh, that's kind of nice looking. We're missing the title. Why are we missing the title? Oh, right. I got a little too semantic with it there. This should be a div element, not a title element. Okay, there we go. And it looks like we do need to set the class on the title element. Okay, there we go. Going strong. So next up, I suppose the right move would be to have it so that it hydrates with live data. So let's do that. Should not be hard. We'll go over to the code that activates it. And I am going to give myself a, let's see. So I guess what I'll do is I'll go to the show method here and have this thing leverage the tab manager to pull out the tabs for the window that it is trying to show on. So we're going to read the current tabs state, and we'll do get all for the window, and we'll map it to give the object we want, which is just tab.url and title tab.title. And let me make sure in my tab manager that URL and title actually are valid attributes. Yeah, and do I have title? I do. So good. Too easy. So then we will render the view, and we're going to call view. I guess we don't need to await it. We'll do view.webcontents.execute JavaScript, and we'll call window. What do we call that? Show tabs, set tabs, and then stringify the tabs, and that should do it. So this is like the laziest way in the world to do RPC, but it does work. There it is. So if I create another tab, we're not going to see that thing anymore. Oh, come on, flies. So I need to let's see. Need to set up a little hack for myself to hide the thing. So let's just do this. If the tab thing is open and we hit Control Tab again, we'll hide it. The problem is that right now the layering is getting messed up if I'm doing this wrong. So because I'm doing basically my tab switcher is hidden behind all the other views, and the simplest way to fix that is just to explicitly hide the tab switcher before I go create myself any more tabs. Okay, so it's not show. Oh, right. Well, that wasn't smart. I basically just negated the code, so I got it so that if you do this key combination, but it's open, it closes it, and I forgot to put any kind of like else in there, so it was basically turning itself off right after it turned itself on. Don't want to do that. Okay, but now it's not going away. Alright. One more condition is required. There we go. Okay, it shows, and now it hides. There we go. Go away, web term. Alright, so let's create some tabs for ourselves so we have some live data to work against. And if I hit Control Tab, ooh, we got issues. Alright, well, first of all, we need to set a background on it. Second of all, we got an overflow problem. Third of all, the grid items are not being consistently sized. Alright, let's get to work. So, first things first, background, FFF. Next, let's set the width on these boys to 120 pixels. Okay, and now the overflow is getting lost. 100 seems too large. Alright, well just for the... Actually, there's a couple of things wrong there. There we go. Interesting. Let's get rid of you. That must be conflicting. Okay. So now let's handle the text overflow. So the title needs to no wrap. And overflow hidden. And text overflow ellipsis. Reload. Alright. That's looking more correct. They are too small at the moment. Let's take it back up to 100 and see how that looks. It's a little small, but we can futz with the sizing later. But the interface is working correctly. So let's go ahead and finish the functionality of it, and then we can get back into the aesthetics. One thing we can do is correctly calculate the sizing. So let's see. Reposition is going to need to know how many items, how many tabs are on it. So I'm going to attach the tabs to the view, and then in the reposition, we'll do our view height is equal to height, just in case we ever need to mess with that. And then var view width is equal to the view.tabs.length times the tab entry width plus the 20 pixels of padding that we got in there. The tab entry width is going to be 100, and then we got to do the grid gap, which is not quite, since that's the grid gap and not, let's see. That we have to calculate slightly differently, so we do the number of tabs. Let's get our tabs. So that's the space that's used by the actual tabs, and then we need to add the gap. Num tabs minus 1 times the gap. Get our precedence correct. And why don't we multi-line this thing so we can explain each piece. Tabs, which are body padding, tab entry grid gap, tab entry width. And then we will take that 200 and we'll divide that by 2. And that view height needs to be divided by 2 as well. Okay, let's see if that worked. Okay, all my tabs are gone, so why don't I turn on retaining the tabs from your last session so that doesn't happen again. Ah, where's my history? Okay, so that width calculation is a little wrong. It's a lot of wrong. How did I get it so wrong? Interesting. How did I get that view width calculation so incorrect? We got the number of tabs times the tab entry width, 100 pixels. Is that correct? Each one is, except we got padding on them, and I didn't do box sizing border box. That one gets me all the time. There it is. Excellent. Okay. So then, I suppose the next step. Alright, so next step, why don't we get the functionality right? So I'm going to turn off my temporary hiding mechanism and put on the real one. And when hide occurs, what we want to do is grab the tab index that's selected and then tell the tab manager to switch over to it. And before I do that, I gotta use the bathroom, so I'll be right back. Okay, back at it. So, when hide occurs, we should do a function call to grab the currently selected tab. And then set the tab manager to that. And we also need to instruct the thing to keep track of what the currently selected tab is. Okay. So let's start with tracking the tab. And we will tell it to then await view dot web contents dot execute JavaScript, and we will tell it to window dot move selection. Oh, all right. Alrighty. So let's get the move selection call done, which is done by. So let's see. Right here, we're going to modify this logic so if Control Tab is hit while it's already open, it's going to just execute the move selection method. Now, if input.shift is included, we're going to move the selection left. But if Shift is not pressed down, we will move the selection right. And now we need the tab switcher interface to recognize which one is currently selected. Let's see, what's the easiest way to do that? I suppose with a class. I'm going to set a big outline on it. 2 pixels of blue. Let's get my blue color. And we will track what the current selection is. So first things first, we will we'll write a function to highlight the correct element. Looking for, let's call it selected. The selected class list.remove selected. Gotta wrap that in a try-catch, because sometimes there will not be a selected item. And then we will do main el.query selector. And how do I want to do this? Let's just do it this way. Query selector all. I need to set a class on these things, don't I? And then we'll do current selection class list.add selected. That's the easiest way to do that. And then we will export window.move selection. And handle overflows. And there we go. All right, let's see if that worked. So we added in some code to track the current selection inside the tab switcher, and some code to highlight the current selection. So that highlighting isn't doing anything. Perhaps I incorrectly handled the outline. Do I need a solid? I do. And it's not following the... And if I change the border width, then everything goes wrong. It's too bad the outline does not respect the border radius, so I guess I could do it by a box shadow. Catch you later, Karma. Thanks for joining. Yeah, but that's awful. Okay, interesting. If anybody has any suggestions on this, I'd appreciate it. I need to... Basically, I wanted to put a outline around the current selection, but I don't want to have to change the border value because that changes the positioning of everything. I guess I could just change the border, box shadow, everything. Is there a way to do a box shadow with an equal width all around all the edges, but without doing any blurring? Could just do it that way, where I set a negative margin to correct against the sizing change. Except that doesn't quite work. Yeah, but how do I... So if I did 0, 0, 0, how would I set the width of the box shadow? At least that part's working. 0, 0, 0, 2. Alright. Sounds fishy, but let's try it. XY blur. I did not realize that the spread and blur were different. 0, 0, 0, 2. Alright, let's try it. Huh. Does that mean that blur and... Wow, look at that. Yeah. Does that mean that blur and spread usually get combined? Alright. We probably also want to set the border color to the same thing. 2864 DC. Yeah. Is the border color getting changed? I don't love that color yet, but yeah, that does work. Okay, so let's... Spread is optional, defaults to 0. TIL, I did not know that. You think you know a platform, you know? Okay, now my overflow code isn't working right, so let's find out what's going on there. If you have both, then you'll get a solid line around the edges. Man, I did not know that. That's good to know. Okay, now why is my overflow failing? Let's see, current selection if it's less than 0, current tabs. Why is that wrong? Equals.
Want to grow? The calcium in milk helps bones grow.
Huh. Now that's crazy. What is happening there? Am I... Huh. It works there, but then it fails the second time. I guess I should see something here. Can't read property class list of undefined. Huh, interesting. Let's investigate. How's it going all the way up to 4? That should never happen. Oh, because I did current tabs equals 0 instead of current selection. One of those kinds of bugs. Okay. And I'm just a little too aggressive on that guard. So that should be like that. There we go. Alright, so far so good. And then we need one more method that we export that the parent window can call to get the selection whenever you release control tab. which is real easy. We just do return current selection. And now, inside of the tab switcher on hide, view.webcontents.execute JavaScript, get selection. Parent window, and I should be able to and that should do it. So we should be just about to get the MVP of this UI. Moment of truth, fingers crossed, here we go. Hey! Yep, it worked. It's slow, weirdly. Oh, there we go. Alright. So that's good. So what next? First thing, I guess, is we need the default, the tab that's selected. So whenever you hit Control Tab, to always be the last tab you were at. So we need to track the last tab that you visited. Because right now it's always defaulting to 0, and that's no good. And then I guess we need to handle click events on this, but I really would kind of prefer not to. Maybe I'll just make it so when you hover over these things, it just sets the current selection. Let's do that. So, we're gonna get rid of Part A. What comes before Part B, y'all? Part A. Alright, so on each tab, I am gonna set dataset.index. And then on each tab, I'm also going to attach a event listener. Oh, what do I want to do? Mouse over, I think? Current selection equals e.currentTarget dataset.index. Perfect. Great, that works exactly right. Easy. I'm going to disable... Can't disable pointer events, but I can make it so that user select is set to none on the whole thing, which I think is a good idea. Good, okay. I think it's already pretty obvious how this is going to be handy to have. So I got no regrets yet. Alright, so now, what next? Let's see. Static work to do. Also gotta do the default tab selection. I guess we'll do that. So we are gonna go to the set tabs method and we'll allow it to pass in a default current selection. And we'll use that. So I guess, how should we track? So I guess the way to do this is to go to the tab manager and have it keep track of the last tab prior to the current selection. Why does that... Can I get you to go away, please? Huh, now they get turned off. Okay. So that's an individual tab I want to do. We'll do it as a global right here. So anytime set active gets called, we'll just record what the previous index was. And that's... Okay. And so then we just need to get a function here. And if the index, let's validate it. And so then over in the tab switcher, we just need to default card selection. Okay, let's give it a shot. So hopefully what this will do is make it so that the when we control tab, the default selection will be the last tab we were on, which is the way that everybody would expect it to work. Yeah, that seems to be working. Good. Alright, let's see what happens if I get rid of the tab. Yeah, good. Good deal, that's working. Alright, what does that leave? I think that just leaves aesthetics now. Distinguish it, differentiate it from what it's above. So to do that, we're going to need to put a margin back onto the window. We'll put a margin of 10 pixels on. And then box shadow of 0, 2px, 3px, RGB, 0, 0, 0. Let's do a pretty dark one, 0.25. And we need to change the sizing to accommodate the new margin. It's a 10 pixel margin both ways. It's probably bigger than it needs to be. Let's try 5 pixels. Alright. Okay, that's not. First of all, hooray, I got my calculation on the positioning right. I think it could be a little darker and larger. So let's take that up to 0.5 and let's do a 3.5 on the. Okay. So our margin's going to need to be bigger. So let's handle that first. Take it all the way up to 10. Okay, not bad. Let's just decrease the vertical offset a little bit, and then we'll roll with it for now. Alright. So we'll roll with that for the moment. Not in love with it, but it's alright. And I think these grid items are a little too small right now. So I'm going to add some vertical padding to the bottom. And I'm going to add maybe 10 pixels to the width. Wrong spot. That's at 20. Alright, so this overall sizing will be wrong, but yeah, it feels better. Let's add a little more vertical pad to the bottom. A little too much. Okay. I like that a little better. Yeah. So let's adjust our calculation here. The height is now no longer 108. I added 6 pixels to that.
What do you know about this Han cat?
So 6, 8, 14, and then the width is up to 120. So that should fix our sizing calculation. Alright. So that's that. Alright, let's try taking the border. I'm just gonna play with the aesthetics a little bit. Okay, well that's awful. So not that. I'm not in love with it, but I don't hate it. You know, I wonder if we could do that new CSS effect. This was real recent. Backdrop filter. No. I was asking a little too much, I'm afraid. What is a valid? May just be too far behind on Chrome. Yeah, it's just not working. So much for that. Okay, let's try an alternative to that drop shadow. I like it better without the drop shadow, if I'm being honest. Actually, I like it a lot better without the drop shadow. Yeah, I think I'm gonna get rid of that drop shadow. Maybe darken that border a little bit. That's really neat. My last tab code is acting a little funny. Keeps on wanting to go back to the Google. What's that about? Huh. Is it reading the mouse somehow? Oh, it might be. Weird. I'll have to work on that. Okay. So I guess the last thing to figure out is how to deal with an overflow. Because eventually there will be too many tabs. And I could set it up so that if I set a max width, I could make it just wrap vertically. Which is actually, I think, what Apple does. So maybe let's try that out. Alright, so first things first. Let's bring back that style. And then I'm going to go over to the tab switcher. And I'm going to apply a limit to the width. So that if it's greater than the width of the window minus 100 pixels, I think, we'll set it to that. Oh, but we gotta set the height. I don't love that idea. Okay. So we're not gonna have it wrap, because that's a pain in the ass. So instead, I'm gonna have it set an overflow X of auto, overflow Y hidden, and let's see. Goes. And we just need to make sure that it correctly, oh man, control click, that's no good. Okay, we're just gonna need to make sure that it brings the current selection into focus. I think if I call the focus, no, it's el.scroll to. That should actually solve that. Main el.scroll to. Scroll into view. That must be a new method, because I sure don't remember that from before. Yep, there we go. Ain't pretty, but it does work. I wonder if there's a way to only scroll into view on the x-axis. the smooth scroll does make that look a little nicer, but I wanted to not vertically scroll it at all. I suppose actually if I keep it hidden, all overflow will be hidden. It'll still scroll into view, but it won't create the scroll bar, which is really what I'd prefer. Yeah, there we go. That's perfect. Actually looks kind of good. Great. We are getting there. Alright, let's pull out some of the removed stuff. I think that leaves us with one more task, and that is just to disable the right-click menu. Which is pretty easy. Just at the beginning we do document.body.add event, listener, context menu, and we just prevent default. And that should be the last time I get to right-click to reload. There we go. Well, y'all, I think we've done it. I'm sure there'll be some bugs to figure out still. Like, why does it keep on... Yeah, my last tab logic is not always correct, I feel like. It keeps on wanting to go back to Reddit. Is it because of the mouse over? I don't know what that is. Alright, well, I guess I'll say that's, let's make sure it works with multiple windows here. We got a Windows focus stealing problem, so we got some work to do here. Needs to be smarter about which window it is currently on. Let's take a look. I'm sure I dealt with that inside the key bindings code at one point. Maybe what I need to do is... Okay, actually I know what I need to do. So where's Windows? And I need to take that off, and I need to take this off. And instead of returning a closure, we're going to have it just return one instance. We use one instance of a method, and then we're just going to use the current window, which we should be able to get focused. There it is. Okay, let's see if that fixes it. Almost there. What do you think, Michael? I think this will be a nice feature to have. There we go. Easy. Yeah, a little easy listening, you know? So there's definitely some issue with the prioritization of which is the most recent to go to. Sometimes it seems to get it wrong, and I don't know why. Other than that, it's looking pretty good, and I think I can debug that another time. doesn't always show up. Oh, that might be a problem with... That's another problem. That's a problem with key bindings not getting registered. That's a pre-existing issue. Do other browsers have this feature? I thought I was the first. I know, you know, Control-Tab... Sure, Firefox doesn't have it. Control-Tab definitely cycles you through tabs, but this will be a way to, I think, cycle through faster. That's nice. Alright, let's review and commit. I think the one thing I need to do is get rid of this console.log right here. And then let's do this. Alright, that's unrelated. Actually, I already had the control tab logic, and this is just added this UI, this kind of alt tab style UI. Just had a thought about what might be causing the previous tab prioritization to be incorrect. Last selected. Alright, so is there any chance the active tab ever changes in another fashion? No, it's always that. Will there be Beaker Gits, but needing a different GitHub than GitHub? Not. So sometimes I've thought about introducing Git as a native protocol to Beaker. We might do that, but no plans yet. If anybody else has other questions, feel free to ask. Now's your chance, because I'm going to wrap this up. My hunch did not. Alright, add the tab switcher sub window and the UI. Alright, done. Hopefully that'll be a nice addition. And if people don't like it, I can always make it a config option to turn off. I feel like it'll be handy.
Sorry, Snoopy. You can't go with us. Dogs aren't allowed in the school bus.
Might be a good idea to just have it select the... Well, no, I wanted to do the last tab you were on. I just wanted to be better about it. Alright, that's obviously broken. Let's figure out what's going on there. Alright, I'll take that as a yes vote. Okay. So let's start by logging the default current selection that's getting used every time. Make sure that number looks like there's nothing wrong with it. And then let's check how this is managed. Arthur, you asking if I care if you share the stream? Okay, let's see here. So if I control tab and wait a minute. Yeah, okay. And I'm gonna go to there, so it should set from 3 to 3. Okay, so obviously that's wrong. Because that should have just got set to 0. So there it got set to 0, that's correct. Now it should get set to 1. Okay. Now it should get set to 3. Now it should get set to 2. Now to 1. Okay, but there it got set to 0. So sometimes it's just wrong. Why would that be? Yeah, Arthur, feel free. Why would that be wrong sometimes? The index of the active. Is the order correct? Why would that be just wrong sometimes? This is interesting. So it should set it to 0. Now it should set it to 1. Now it should set it to 2. Now it should set it to 3. And now it should set it to 0. Now it should set it to 2. Now it should set it to 0. Now it should set it to 1. I think that might be why. If you call that and it's not actually a change of tab, it's incorrectly setting it, that might be the problem. No. No, that was correctly set and it just didn't render correctly. Yeah, see, default current selection is set to 2, but it's rendering 1 right now. Why would that be happening? Maybe it's that mouse over code. Let's try taking that out real fast. Okay, so my brother just texted me with a surprise face emoji and then a tweet to Valve's Twitter account. And the tweet is, "We're excited to unveil Half-Life Alyx, our flagship VR game, this Thursday at 10 p.m. Is this Half-Life 3? Half-Life 3 may be confirmed. see if we can get this thing to act up. This is looking right. Good point, they skipped right over 3. I mean, at this point, you might as well, right? 3 is way too hyped up. Skip it, just go straight to 4. It does look like that mouse over code is the problem, which is interesting. I'm not sure what would be causing that to trigger. But now without it, it does seem to be working correctly. But you really do need that behavior in there, because if I'm going to expect to want to do that, it's really handy to be able to do that, so I'm just going to need to get that code to behave the way it should. Alright, let me think. Could be that mouse over is the wrong event to listen to. This stuff is always really overly complicated. Could it be I want mouse enter instead? Let's see what happens if I do mouse enter instead. Man, VR Half-Life. I've been holding out not getting a VR headset this whole time. I'm not gonna be able to fight that anymore. Okay, still working incorrectly. So mouse center is not right. Let's see. I assume that, like, whatever is happening, the event is getting triggered, the mouse over event. Let's be really hacky. Let me think. Yeah. Let's be really hacky. That's right, I'm doing a set timeout. Let's wait for 100 milliseconds. After and attach it then. And let's see if that solves our problem. Because maybe what's happening is the mouse over event is getting picked up whenever the thing's in the process of creation. Yeah, that might have actually fixed it. Set timeout saves it again. That's right. Civilized, an elegant weapon for it. Honestly, I don't know if that's more or less civilized, but we'll take it. It works. I'm rolling with that. Ship it. I should leave myself a comment explaining why I'm doing that. Always leave yourself those notes. Alright, get rid of this logging, and then we will really be ready to ship this one. Alright, once again, last call for any questions if y'all have any before I sign off. Just gonna confirm this thing is working and then call it a night. Looks good, no logging. Alright. Do I have a UI for managing multiple profiles yet for brand company? Yep. This is still in a state of, it's in progress. But you'll notice whenever you go to the main browser interface, you'll see your current user, and then there's a switch user mechanism where you can create new users. And every user will have their own file system. So they'll have their own home drive and their own /public drive. And that will be how we do account management. So when you do that, like each user will be its own window. Don't know if it works right now. Let's see. We're in the process of changing it up. Yeah, there it goes. So temporary user creator. That's working. Thanks. I think it all worked pretty well for us. Alright, next question. Is there a forum for Beaker, or is that mainly that? There is a forum. There's really for both. It is a discourse. Let me grab the link. So we just have Beaker as one of the sub-forums in here. What's your plan for adoption? Cross-posting tools from Twitter to Beaker? I don't know. So our plan is, we kind of think of, like I was saying earlier, we think of this, we think of the network as what we're calling the grid, this giant shared network, you know. And so we think that what we can do for adoption is make something that's really appealing to power users and hackers. I mean, the tooling here is very file-centric, and it includes web terminal for writing command line tools and exploring your, file system this way. And so our thinking is there's really two aspects of the experience that should be fun. One is the ability to almost do a sort of social networking entirely through the file system, where this is like my profile, and I'll share this with people, and we're still working on exactly what will be included in the profile, but for the moment it'll just be like a folder like this. And you have a friends folder where you mount the public drives of your friends, so you can like explore around everybody's different drives to like find their files. And then we have this mechanism for feeds, which I did, if you look at Dev Diary number 3, I did a bit on this. But basically, using these feed folders, we can create views that merge together everybody's feed folder and just shows the latest files that they publish sequentially. And so, like, it's a pretty neat kind of way to just, like, share things and hang out. So that's what we're kind of going to go for, is like the really, really nerdy social network, a social network that's like files oriented. It's for programmers. It's for people that like screwing around with peer-to-peer tools. And hopefully that will be an interesting enough environment with enough toys in it that it'll get some uptick. So that's my answer. We're going for the toy route to improve on adoption. Using Beaker for Google Photos alternative would be amazing. I agree about that. Need a new UI. Yeah, I agree about that. And it's really pretty easy to build basically like photo album management tooling on this. One of the ways this will work is every hyperdrive has a type, and so you can actually choose it here. And so what we're eventually going to do is make it so you can create a photo album type of hyperdrive. And there'll be lots of different types of photo album, podcast, video channel, things like that. And then the front end for these different hyperdrive types will actually be dynamically injected, so that like the hyperdrive itself is just data, but then whatever application you have installed is like your photo album application gets loaded automatically whenever you visit a photo album. And so it'll give you a really powerful tool for building applications around photo albums and like customizing the experience a lot. So that's where our head's at with that. I did a static YouTube alternative for Ruby uploader for it. Look forward to trying it on that. Yeah, I would love to see a YouTube clone. I'd love to see a SoundCloud clone. I'd love to see an Imager clone. All possible and not too hard to do on this tooling. How do you incentivize seeding? Can I seed my friends' private folders even I can't see the data? So there's going to be two pieces of tools to like help people out with seeding. One of them is social seeding, which we'll get to eventually, but that's basically where you automatically rehost stuff that your friends upload. And then we're also going to have public peer services like Hashbase that just act as a service to keep your stuff online, so it's kind of straightforward. Can I see my friends' private folders even? I can't see the data. Not yet, but we have ideas for creating at-rest encryption for drives so that you could potentially have other computers help and keep it online without being able to read the content. Is there a way to add custom commands to WebTerm? Congrats for getting WebTerm in there, by the way. I appreciate it. Yeah, there is. So, if I run the help command, you can see the current list of commands, and you'll see that each of them is listed under a package, and you can actually create new WebTerm command packages. And so that'll be one way to do it. And it's the tooling needs work. It's one of the things that's like on my to-do list, but it's relatively straightforward to make these WebTerm commands. And then another way that it'll be possible is we're talking about page commands, and that is basically an API that a website can use to export WebTerm commands, so that when you browse to them, you can run commands against the current page. So let me show what that'll look like. So my cool app. So I'm making a website here, and so this isn't implemented yet, but I'm just showing how this will work. So you'd be able to set up a script and do navigator, I think, dot, I think it'll probably be something like navigator dot add command maybe. And you would do like name, hello, and you can put other stuff in here like help. And then there'd be like method. And so it would be more or less built like this, and then from WebTerm what you would be able to do is type at hello, and that would run that command that's on the page. Yeah, I think this would be really interesting because you would basically be able to write these hybrid command line / GUI applications so that you not only are seeing the output of the commands through the web terminal as you're working, but you would also be able to update the page with the results. It'd be a really easy way to build applications so that you can still have, renderings of state, but you don't actually have to put all the buttons and interactions in the HTML, which is where a lot of the work for UI work comes from. So this kind of a hybrid terminal and GUI application through page commands could be a really nice way to build applications. So yes, can friends subscribe to my public folder and get updates of new editions, or is that what social is for? Yeah, so check this out. So this is my public drive, and this is my friends folder. Why don't I grab a temporary user real fast, and we'll work off of this. Oh, interesting. Huh. Oh, right. Yeah, users are not quite implemented correctly at the moment. So am I going to be able to create a test user for this? Let's see. Wait. I may not be able to demonstrate this as well as I'd like to right now. But so you would basically save your friends' hyperdrives, their public drives, to your friends folder. So it becomes this listing of all your friends. Let's see, I might be able to do this manually. Let's try doing a new hyperdrive, fake user. And I'm gonna go to the drive properties, and I'm gonna give it the type for a person. And let's give it an avatar. All these embarrassing pictures to pick from. We'll go with this. Okay. So it is being recognized as a person. So now I should be actually getting a There it is, add to friends. So let's go back to my friends folder. And there's the fake user. Alright, so I've effectively followed that person by adding this fake user to the friends drive, right? So I have a feed folder, and they have a feed folder as well. They would have one. And so what we can do is actually merge those two folders together to create this feed kind of behavior. So let's do hello.md inside the fake.md. Hey man, how is it going? Okay, so now we have two different files and two different folders. Got mine, and I got my fake users. So now I want to get a way to combine those together into a view, and so I'm going to use a .view file. And this is a special kind of file that's designed to create basically virtual folders that query the file system. So I'm going to merge together my public feed and my public friends, all my friends' feed folders. Alright, and now we have this view of a post by me, you can see my name under there, and the post by him. And if I set it to a vertical listing with inline mode, there we go. Basically a social media feed inside the Files Explorer, where the files that we write to our feed folder are getting listed together and rendered in line. And so all we got to do at this point is basically add likes and comments to the Files Explorer, and you got yourself a Twitter clone. So you wouldn't have to manually do all that construction that I just did. We'll probably ship most of the mechanisms for that by default, like this feed.view would be available to you already. But that's sort of what we're thinking about how to do a basic kind of a social media application on the grid. So if anybody has any questions about what I just did, feel free to ask. Let me see here. So CS, that was kind of a response to you. Can friends subscribe to my public folder and get updates on new editions? This is how you do that. You create a view that basically merges together lots of different folders, and then you can list them by most recent, and there you go. You got a feed of what's new. Arthur, so like standard notes writ large. I don't know standard notes, so you'll have to tell me a little more about that. CS, will Santa deliver Beaker 09 for Christmas? No. We are currently aiming to start our internal beta by Christmas, and then try to go to a public pre-release soon after. But there's lots of little details we still need to get right. We really want it to be at the point where, you know, the way we see it, people that are going to be trying out 09 are going to probably be people that are familiar with it already and are interested to find out what we've changed with all the kind of year-long heads down period we had. And so we want to make sure it's worth it for people if they make that effort, you know? So we want it to be a very clear way to get into the network and start to do interesting things. And so we want to spend a little time really getting that onboarding experience right. So that, you know, so that we make that release really count. Any ideas on using Beaker on multiple devices? Is it through importing private keys? That is something that is really big on our radar. We talk about it a lot, and it's called multi-writer. It won't be in Beaker 09. It'll probably be another year after Beaker 09 before we get multi-writer. But the current thing that we're thinking about doing is setting it up so that you share private keys between your devices, and then whenever a conflict occurs between the two devices, there will be a process for basically rebasing the timelines so that they match up again. So that's what our current thinking is on that. Any other questions? Alright, so that right there is just about how easy it is to construct a social media feed off of that merged together feed folder. Shared blogs, how to handle permissions on documents. Like I want to create a folder where I'm an admin and a friend is just a member for collaboration. I'll answer your question in a second. It's great seeing you, Mike. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you later. So CS, we will have those mechanisms. I don't know yet how they will work. Yeah, that's really all I can tell you right now. I mean, we know you need it. I haven't figured it out yet. Author GitHub link or anything? You talking about like what's my GitHub, or what are you asking there? Author Sir Weaver the person. Oh, gotcha. You're talking to Arthur. Yeah, author SR Weaver CS is asking for the GitHub link. I don't know if you can post in the chat. It may be disabled due to like spam prevention. Yeah, it'll definitely be good for code sharing and also as a development environment, I think. There we go. My totally perfect social media application. Yeah, it's probably a better fit as a Google Docs or Google Drive alternative. Compared to other protocols, how important has versioning been in your experience with DAT? Is versioning super big issue? So I think maybe now is the time to call it a wrap. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for joining me. You can find me on Twitter at pfrazy, so feel free to hit me up there. There's also a Beaker browser channel inside of Freenode, so you can join us there too. So yeah, thanks for joining everybody, and I'll catch you all online. Catch you later.